Hey everybody, Pastor Scott here, offering a brief response video following up to last week's opening week of confirmation lesson creation as well as sermon notes. First thing I want to say is great job everyone. I know that this is new for all of us. I know it's very new for you, and it's a brand new way for me to present information and for you to receive it and then to give feedback on it. So thank you to all of you for this initial one. Just have a few quick responses to some of the responses to the responses that you gave me based on the feedback that you had in your conversations as families. And then I've got one question that came up from the sermon notes that wanted to share as well, or kind of talk about. So yeah, just great job. The first thing that we talked about as we talked about the stages of creation, and in particular the first account in Genesis 1, I had you just talk about what were the various days, what did God do each day, and you really picked up on that very well, and you caught that sort of cyclic, circular, repeating pattern that came into that poetic presentation of the story of where did creation come from. Also, you did a great job of comparing chapter 1 and chapter 2, the first account to the second account. You picked up on a lot of the same similarities, and you also picked up on some of those differences. So great job in seeing that, and also for finding sort of the truth, or the thing that both of them teach us, that God is the creator, even depending on what perspective we're looking at in the creation. One of the questions we talked about is what new thing did God talk about on the fifth day, or what new thing did God say on the fifth day, and then also on the sixth day? And this was when animals were introduced into the thing, and a couple of you picked up on it. God says, "Be fruitful and multiply." God says that to the animals, and then God also says that to humanity. And what I really think is impressive or important about this aspect is God is telling animals, and humans are animals as well, that God is telling the animals to basically do what animals do, and not only that, but to participate in the ongoing action of creation. That's really a big aspect of it. We see some of this in the second account too, when God brings the animals to Adam and says, or to the man, and says, "What will you call them?" God is inviting animals and then humanity to join together in the ongoing work of creation. So that's kind of that new thing. God says, "Be fruitful and multiply." And then on the sixth day, after humanity has been created, this is when we make the switch. And I think I talked about this in my first video as well, that God makes the switch from calling this good to saying, "Hey, this is Tov," now to Tov Mahot, or "This is very good." So that reminder that from that first account, it seems that God thinks that humanity is sort of the epitome, the high point of creation, and then we're all invited into it. So that was kind of that thing. Great feedback on the question about science versus faith, or creation versus evolution, or kind of whatever we want to talk about. You all sort of gave some very thoughtful responses to that, and I appreciate you thinking about that question of how do these fit together? Are there aspects that come into conversation nicely together? And most of you said, yeah, we think there does. But there's also some tension between it. There's some aspects that maybe don't line up so well, and sort of make us wonder, and that's okay. Like I said in the initial video, I think science tells us the how, and the Bible or faith maybe tells us the why. That creation happened because of God's delight in creation, and then science sort of gives us some of the answer, some of the question, well, how does it happen? So great job on that. Now, one person asked a question, if we're not going to argue with the Bible, should we argue then with what the scientists, or what science tells us when they tell us different things? And I'm going to say both yes and no. And honestly, I think we can argue with the Bible too. We can ponder on it. We can debate it. We can be in tension with what the Bible tells us. We can question that. We can ask God, "Hey, I don't know what to think about this," when we're praying about stuff. But also in science, we're called to question things as well. That's how science continues moving forward, is by asking those questions. Now, is it a bad thing? No, it's not to do either of these. But to the question of, well, should we believe the Bible over science? Well, I can't tell you what to believe or what not to believe. Again, I go back to the how versus why, and or sometimes who in creation happening from God, even if I don't understand how it all works. So should we question things? Absolutely. Is it okay to? Absolutely. I always think questions are good. They do not indicate that you're doing anything wrong. It just means that you're asking those questions. So great job on that. One last thing, one question came up on the sermon notes. So one of you asked, why do people lie when they know that the truth will make you feel more free? And that is very likely in response to when Jesus says, you will know the truth and the truth will set you free. Great, great question. I don't know why people lie. And yet people do. And I do too. You know, we all do. We all, at times, we don't want to face the truth. We don't want to admit that we did something wrong or that we failed at something or we failed someone else. So we try to cover it up. And why that happens, I don't know. I just think it speaks into the brokenness of this world and the brokenness that we all inhabit and that inhabits all of us. We call that sin, or I say brokenness a lot. That's just one of the things that I say a lot. But it's evidence of this broken reality that we're a part of and that we experience. And we're going to start looking at that actually in this coming week's lesson when we get into chapter 3 of Genesis and we look at what we call the fall. So that's just a little bit of a preview. Thanks again for this first effort. Folks, if you didn't get information turned back into me, you still can. So if you want to get that made up, that's still an option. But don't sweat it if you didn't. Not a huge deal. So looking forward to this week. Thanks, everybody.